be able to it. So the natural history study is basically in conjunction with coming in to see the doctor, and we are just asking people if they're willing to give us samples, if that's optional, so you don't have to. We collect blood samples and cheek swabs for this study. And then we also collect information from the medical record to kind of track over time how people are doing and what outcomes they might be experiencing, if people are having hospitalizations, if they're on different medications. And then with this, once he collects lots and lots and lots of samples, the hope is, again, one day to get a little bit closer to that precision medicine approach so that he can say, oh, you've got this genetic marker, and we know that people with this genetic marker typically respond better to this medication versus this medication. Or, hey, if you've got this genetic marker, we definitely don't want to give you this medication. That is the ultimate goal of that. And so next, I have the cleanup IPF trial. We use acronyms because I think got these long titles. This study is probably going to end enrollment, I'm going to say, in the next couple of weeks. It has enrolled at a much faster rate than we had anticipated. And this is a nice, simple study comparing standard of care alone, so you just come to your doctor, or standard of care plus one of two antimicrobial therapies. We have doxycycline and we have cotrimoxazole, which is also known as Bactrim. And so there's an algorithm that we use. So we look at what medications the person's on, what allergies they might have, and anybody who doesn't have any contraindications to Bactrim gets Bactrim. And so people who are on this antimicrobial therapy are on that, taking it daily as long as they can tolerate it. So again, people who have issues, we're getting lab work done, safety labs, we then are either going to back them off of the full dose or take them off completely or change them to the doxycycline. And the hope is that the people who are randomized to the antimicrobial therapy will have better outcomes. Less hospitalizations, less infections, and hopefully in another year we'll know whether or not this has worked or not. I'm actually encouraged just based on the people that I've seen. But again, that's just like my little tiny group of people that I've seen and just hearing on via different calls. Yes, ma'am.
It's very interesting what you have to say, because I was diagnosed in 2015 with interstitial lung disease, pulmonary fibrosis, due to most likely a connective tissue disease disorder, and I've been on Bactrim since the beginning for actually a different issue. I've had no infections whatsoever with my lungs.
And did you used to have infections before that?
I never did actually.
So,
but now with fibrosis, I would definitely be more prone to them, I would think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Or if you do get an infection, then you can, have a lot more challenges.
No, I've had blood clots, but I've had no bronchitises, pneumonias, or anything like that. But that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm. And have you had any negative side effects, and how long did you say you've been on it?
I've been on it 3 years, not too much longer after I was diagnosed, but of course I was on it for an infection reason.
And I ask you that because one of the reasons that people have decided not to be in this study is because of the fear that if you're on an antibiotic long term, you could become more resistant, right, to certain things. And so, that's a real concern. And as a research participant or a potential research participant, you got to be your own advocate. Look at all of the facts and decide whether or not it's a risk that you're worth taking, that seems worth taking for you. Doxycycline, that is a drug that is used Lyme disease, so a lot of people are on that long term for Lyme disease. It's also used for acne, and then I know I've had it given like prophylactically before my lovely root canal that I've had in the past. So, but yeah, you have that 50-50 chance, and then if they find next year, or whenever the results are finalized, that this actually works, that will likely become a new standard of care for people with IPF. So, like, right, with connective tissue disease, they often will give people Bactrim prophylactically like that, and they'll be on it long term. So now we want to see, does it work in IPF?
I would think that once you get on in this test, you have to stay on it, or you have well, I know you can always come off of it,
Right.
but how will the doctors look at that? If you get on it and then you want to come off because you don't feel as well as this way you just explained.
Right, and so it is individualized, and that is actually one of the things that the doctors are curious about. So the first person who was enrolled, it's for up to 3 years is what the study is. Now, because we're just finishing enrollment, whoever the last person enrolled is only gonna get it for 12 months, but it's 500 people that are gonna be enrolled in the study. And so we have a good chunk of people who have been on it for that 36-month period. And with research, we closely monitor everything. So we're looking at adverse events. The biggest one for the Bactrim in particular is something called hyperkalemia, which is elevated potassium. And so we have a safety lab drawn a week after you go on it, and if your potassium is elevated, then you're either going to get dropped down, the dose is going to be lowered, and then safety labs redrawn to see how you're doing, or switch you over to the doxy. And then there's like 3-month and 6-month lab work. So that's part of research. You do this in a very systematic way with safety of the people who are in the study being a critical factor that doctors are always looking at. That's why we closely monitor that are in research. And with research, it's completely voluntary. So you could literally say, hey, I think I want to try this research study, and then you get on a drug and you're like, whoa, I am not feeling well at all. And then you just call and say, not working for me, don't want to do it anymore, 0 impact on your regular clinical care. We just say, okay, thank you for trying, and we'll take you off of it, and then your study participation ends.
And the side effects also.
Exactly, because you never know how you're going to respond. And we will, the doctors will encourage, like we have one woman who, she is on OFEM, so that's one of those 2 FDA-approved drugs, and she's also on the Bactrim, and once she started taking Bactrim, she started having an increase in diarrhea. That's very common with OFA, but she's like, this is crazy. It's like 6 times every day. And so we said, okay, that is not pleasant. Let's, take a little holiday and then back you off and put you on a lower dose Monday, Wednesday, Friday, instead of every day, twice a day. Once a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so now she's been fine with it. But it's always up to you. If you're like, no, I don't want to try that, then we say, fine, done. We'll just take you off of it. But if you want to try it, you try it. Especially if you feel like it is something that might benefit you. But if you feel like, this is for the birds, like if you have chemotherapy, that can make you feel terrible, right?
One other question.
Sure.
Suppose, and I am seeing Dr. Falk,
Oh, okay.
and I have a problem because I live in Chesterfield, which is south of Richmond, okay? It's a little ways to go up there. Suppose I get sick here, well, of course, maybe I'm answering my own question, but it's a long way from here. Am I caught in a cross here if my doctors are all here, primary care doctors are here, but my problem is probably coming from whatever I'm taking from UVA?
So you're saying if you were in a research trial
Yeah.
and you started a new investigational drug and you were then having side effects. So right, you would come here to get your care, but you would call me, and I would then talk to Dr. Paul and say, hello, we have a problem here. And she would then provide advice. And she would, I would assume, would actually be in touch with whoever you were seeing here at this hospital to say, hey, he's on this research trial, you know, he's taking back from and a lot of trials, they'll give you these little like wallet cards saying, hey, I'm in this research trial, so that physicians elsewhere know what's going on with you. And physicians talk a lot together, you know, when you have care, because we have a lot of people who have their care at more than one place, or they'll have like a local pulmonologist that they see primarily, and then if they really flare up, they'll come and see one of our specialists. But primarily, it's like, hey, you don't want to drive 2 hours for every single pulmonology appointment.
That's a concern I have.
Yeah.
But-
So no, you would be able to come here, be treated here, and then she would collaborate and advise on things. Okay, so next we have, did I skip anything? Hold on, let me see. Make sure. That's not going up, is it? So what we have? Okay, so that's cleanup. And those two medications too, by the way, with cleanup, those are FDA approved drugs, and they're for the research study just being used in what's called an off-label fashion. So not for, you know, they're indicated for like infections, right? So next we have another registry study. So this is, we just call it IPF and ILD Pro. This study started off just as IPF Pro, and they enrolled, I think, like 1,000 people. We came in at the very tail end of it, with IPF across a number of sites. There's probably 50 sites across the United States for this. So we're not enrolling right now people who have IPF in this registry, but we are enrolling people who have non-IPF chronic fibrosing ILDs. So that's there's a lot of them, but sarcoidosis, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, connective tissue ILDs, autoimmune ILDs. And so for this, it doesn't require much from people. You come in for your regular visits, we ask you to complete some questionnaires. They're collecting samples. Again, genetic research is where it is. So they want to do some genetic research on that, and then extracting data from the medical records for that one. So very minimal additional time. Next we have the Isabella 1 trial. So I am hoping that we are going to be open and ready to enroll on this in the next month. This is also for people with IPF, and I will tell you, we do focus a little bit more on IPF in our group because Dr. Noth is a leading expert in IPF, and so the focus right now is a little bit heavier on IPF. So this is one of those large phase 3 trials. They want to look and see if this investigational agent, GLPG1690, along with standard of care, so people can stay on their pirfenidone or their OFEV, is actually going to slow the progression of that disease. So this is called an add-on therapy. This trial is going to be very time intensive. It is not in conjunction with standard clinical care visits, and so my best guess, not just having reviewed the protocol, is that study visits are going to last anywhere from 3 to 6 hours.